Cassidy, and Hammy, Crystal, the Board Game Blitzers, showing your favorite games.
My number 30 is Clank, a deck building adventure. I believe this is the second and I think last deck building game on my top 100 list. In Clank, adventurers are building up a deck of cards that consist of different items and helpers to get them through a dungeon filled with peril and, most importantly, a dragon. And a lot of the things that you do during the course of the game are going to cause noise or clank, which will make the dragon angry and make him want to attack you. Your goal is to get as deep down in the dungeon as you can to collect valuable treasures and then get back out. What's unique about this game is it combines a card deck building mechanism with an actual game board that you're moving a piece around on. And that's not very common in deck building games, so that's why I like this one so much. And the deck building itself is pretty simple. You don't have to build up any real complex engines with your deck to make it work well. And honestly, it's a lot of fun. The push your luck aspect of diving down as far as you can on the board and then getting back up when before time runs out is really tough, and that's why Clank, a deck building adventure, is my number 30. My number 29 is Race for the Galaxy. Race for the Galaxy is a card game where players are trying to build up a galactic empire by settling planets, building developments, collecting goods, selling those goods for more resources and victory points, and building up an engine of stuff, as you will. What's neat about this game is that there's simultaneous action selection at the beginning of each round. There are 7 different phases that can happen in each round, but the only phases that will happen are ones that players choose at the beginning of the round. So what's interesting is if you choose the settle action, then someone else chooses the develop action. Everyone gets to do both of those actions, but the people who selected them get a bonus to what they get to do during that phase of the round. So you're always trying to predict, okay, if you want to do 3 different things during this round, which actions do you think your opponents are going to select, and you want to select a different one. This game has multi-use cards. The cards in your hand that you end up building, settling, and developing are also potentially the money that you'll be spending to do those things, as well as the goods that your worlds will produce. A lot of people complain about the iconography on the cards in this game, and I've never really had much of an issue with it. This was one of the first modern board games that I learned back in 2007 when I got into the hobby, and I don't remember really struggling with it when it was taught to me. Maybe I had a really good teacher, I don't know, but my number 29 is Race for the Galaxy. My number 28 is Happy Pigs. In this game, players select actions simultaneously, and then they get to do the action they selected, but the number of times they get to do that action depend on how many other players chose it as well. Each round there's only a specific amount of actions that can be taken of each type, such as going to the market, feeding your pigs, or doing other things. And the artwork on this game is adorable. It's really cute and light-hearted. This one is neat because it's kind of engine building, but in a way that doesn't feel like engine building. You know, you buy little baby pigs and you feed them and grow them up to big pigs, and then you sell them for lots of money, and sometimes it's more optimal to sell them at a different time because the prices in the market will shift or change. I'm having a hard time describing it because I have a different type of little piggy attacking me right now. But my number 28 is Happy Pigs. My number 27 is Heartthrob. And I know, some of you out there are thinking, yes, that's an amazing choice. And a lot of you are going, what the heck is Heartthrob? That's not a board game I've ever heard of. And both of you would be completely correct. So Heartthrob is a mass market game from the 1980s in which you have a bunch of photos of stock photography 80s boys, like teenage boys, and you and the other players are asked a series of questions about these boys, and you have to write down which boy you would pick based on the question. You also have to guess which boy the other players would pick, and then you get points based on how many you guess correctly for the rest of the players at the table. So the questions that come in the game are things like, do you want to dance? Do you want to go on a date? Do you want to go steady? And yes, it actually says, do you want to go steady? I know no one says that anymore. But I have taken a cue from the now long gone podcast, well, not long gone, but it's no longer running podcast, Flip the Table, and I often write my own questions when I play this game with friends. And while I do not condone judging people based on their appearance, because that is wrong and not good, in this game, since it's 80s stock photography, they don't really feel like real people, and we are very... I can't even tell you how much fun this game is. It's the best! I love it so much, and every time I bring this out, people have a blast. And it doesn't matter who you are or what kind of people you like, you can have some fun with this for sure. You can usually find copies of it online, not too expensive, but I love it to death, and it's a lot of fun, especially at like conventions, things like that. But yeah, so my number 27 is Heartthrob. My number 26 is Wordsy. Wordsy is a word game in which you have a grid of cards laid out on the table that contain letters. There's 8 letters put out each round, and those letters are worth varying amounts of points from 5 to 2, sometimes with some bonuses. At the beginning of a round, all of the players look at the grid of words and then write down any word that they want using any letters that they want, including ones that aren't listed in the grid. So you have no restrictions as to what letters you can use, but you only score points for using the letters that are listed in the grid. So if, for instance, if there is a W and an H and a K, or for instance, if you write down which, you'll score for the W and the H, but you won't score any points because you didn't use a K. Something like that. Once one player has written down their word, they flip over a sand timer, and the rest of the players only have until the timer runs out to write down their word. Then players score based on how many of the letters they used, and you move on to the next round. It's lightning fast, and you get to drop a couple of your low scores at the end of the game. So if there's a couple rounds where you're just not sure what word to write down, you get to, drop a couple of the bad scores, and yeah, that's kind of it. It's really simple as word games go, but it's really fun, and I find that the lack of restriction as to what letters you can use helps people that usually have trouble in word games, because sometimes when you can only use specific letters, people tend to freeze up, but with the ability to use any letter you want, it makes it easier. So that's why I like it, and that's why it's my number 26, Wordsy. My number 25 is Time Stories. And for the purposes of this list, I'm including Time Stories as a single entry, even though there are multiple scenarios and expansions that have come out for Time Stories. So in each scenario, you are a group of people who work for an agency in the future that has the ability to send people back in time and take on the personas of people living in that time. Kind of like Quantum Leap, you're jumping into other people's bodies. Then you have to complete specific tasks and find pieces of information to solve whatever mystery or problem you've been tasked with by the agency. Sometimes you have to fight things, sometimes you have to have a specific item to unlock access to other items, sometimes you have to collect different things and solve puzzles. It's really innovative, and there are a lot of surprises, especially in the first couple scenarios, that I really enjoyed. The first one that comes in the base box is actually one of my favorites. I'm still looking forward to more content coming out for this game, so that is why it is my number 25, Time Stories. My number 24 is Number 9. Number 9 is an abstract tile laying game where players are constructing a little pile of tiles, and all of the tiles are shaped kind of like the numbers 0 through 9. The goal is to build up these tiles that are oddly shaped in a way that you can stack new tiles on top of other tiles, because you only score points for tiles that aren't touching the table, the ground level of your tableau, whatever you want to call it. And the tiles will score based on what number they actually display. So if you build a big flat area and then you put a number 1 on top of that, then you only score 1 point for it. But if you put a number 9 on top of it, you score 9 points, and so on and so forth. And as you go higher, the levels become more valuable because you then multiply the tiles by 2 or 3 or, well, I've never gone past that. So it's abstract for sure, there's no theme here, but it is really small and transportable, not in the box, but if you take the pieces out of the box, you can take it just about anywhere. And it's easy to teach, and it's colorful and bright, and I love it quite a bit, and so that is why it's my number 24. Number 9. My number 23 is Deception, Murder in Hong Kong. In this game, you are all taking on the roles of investigators trying to solve a murder. It's a deduction game, and one of the investigators happens to be the murderer, and they're trying to throw everyone off the trail. So one person will be chosen as the forensic scientist in each game, and that person is going to be giving clues to the rest of the group using these scene cards that have different pieces of information on them. And then the rest of the investigators have to figure out who it is, but since you don't know which person, you're looking at the cards in front of everybody to try and figure out how things are linked together and how they work. If you play with enough people, there's other roles that are included, like a witness to the crime and an accomplice to the crime and all these other things, and they help kind of muddy the waters a bit because there are certain people who know information but don't want other people to know that they know, and so on like that. So Deception, Murder in Hong Kong is a great game, and it works with larger groups of people than a lot of other board games, and honestly it's just lots and lots of fun. So that's why it is my number 23, Deception, Murder in Hong Kong. My number 22 is Role Player. In Role Player, it is a board game that gamifies the aspect of rolling up a new player for an RPG. So there's no RPG here. You aren't actually playing an RPG, but you're kind of doing the character creation part of an RPG as a board game. So you have a specific character with a class and a race and a backstory that you have to fulfill by using dice drafting and dice placement to build up their stats. Isn't that right, maybe? Yep, that's what you have to do. You have to, and maybe likes Role Player a lot, clearly. So you draft dice, you place them on your board, and then you go to the market and you buy items and scrolls and spells and armor, and you try and build up your character as best you can to get victory points like every game. But so the better you fulfill the requirements that are on your character's board, the more points you'll get. And this game is really fun. I've played it with the expansion, the Monsters and Minions expansion, which adds some more content to it. But honestly, the base game by itself is just great. And I really, really like it. So that's why it is my number 22, Role Player. My number 21 is Kanagawa. Kanagawa is a lovely game about being a painter's apprentice, and you are trying to hone your craft and paint the most beautiful landscape you can. Each round of the game, you get to draft cards from this bamboo mat in the middle of the table, and the number of cards you get is based on in which round you choose to take cards, because cards will come out one row at a time, but you can choose a column of cards at any time. So if something you really want comes out, you can take it earlier, or you can wait till more cards come out. Then all of those cards will either go into your studio to give you more painting abilities, or into your print, adding to your landscape. But you can only paint things if you have the paintbrushes and studio space available to do it. This one looks really neat on the table, but yet it still has a pretty small footprint, which is kind of nice, and it comes in a reasonably small box as well. I have a few games with a painting theme in them, but this one is one of my favorites because it's so lovely and I really like it a lot. So that's why Kanagawa is my number 21.